Please bow your head. Gracious God, we ask your blessings as we come together in this meeting tonight. Please give us your guidance and direction by opening our hearts and minds to your wisdom and understanding as we seek to do your will for the Newton County School System. We ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Matthews, do we have any special recognition?
We do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have no public participation. I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Meadows. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Baker. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries. Need a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Meadows. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Baker. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same. Superintendent's report on the operations, Dr. Carpenter.
Mr. Chairman and board members, we'll begin with our financial report. The board's financial report for the month ending September 30th, 2011 reflects 25% of the fiscal year complete, 1/4 of the school year, with total revenues at 25.07% and total expenditures at 26.08%. Salaries and benefits for next June and July have been accrued, so that's noted there in your financials, along with our July and August QBE reimbursements. Some of our expenditures may look greater this month, and that's because, if you remember, we pay our insurance and software licenses and that type of thing at the beginning of the year. Also, we're required to forward fund our health insurance at a higher percentage during the first month, and then that percentage tapers off during the latter months. So that's the reason for the increase there. Note that revenues received from ad valorem and other local taxes are at 23.94% received, and that reflects our September tax distribution. If you live here in Newton County and you own property, you know that we collect tax dollars twice, in September and December. Also, the county uses an electronic payment system, and that allows us to get those funds in on a weekly basis, so that's greatly appreciated. Finally, for the benefit of the board, just for your information, our open enrollment period began October 11th. Employees received that information from our business office today, and that period for our employees to make elections will end on November 10th. Any questions with our financials?
I have one. I probably should have asked you this yesterday.
It better not be a hard one.
I don't think it is. On E-rate, when we looked at those options that Dr. Shattuck pulled up for us on E-rate.
Yes, sir.
In each of the four, there were dollars coming back into, correct me if I'm wrong, general fund. I think the range was the lowest 71,000 up to something.
Yes.
50 was the lowest.
50 was
Was it?
low, and I think
Okay.
it went up into the hundreds depending on.
What I didn't hear yesterday was, were there ideas, other ideas that the system had as to where those dollars might be able to go? Or were there other ideas of how to use that E-rate, those E-rate dollars?
I think the ideas I heard mentioned on yesterday were to do some of the technology cabling and wiring pieces, and along with the data center, or one option was to just place those dollars on the bottom line of our general fund and use that 1 point some odd million dollars to buffer the general fund. So those were the types of things that can be done with E-rate dollars. There are no limits or strings on E-rate dollars. They can be used as the district sees fit.
So we approved first and second tier on those schools to have the technology updated, is that right?
Yes, Dr. Shattuck, you may want to help me out. We did, I think I heard the board approve the tier 1 and tier 2 schools to be worked on for cabling and wiring. That equated to about $500 and some odd $1,000. And there's another 500.
Tier 1 was 400,000 and tier 2 was 100, approximately 100,000.
Right. Okay. I think that's all. There was no other proposal for allocating those dollars anywhere other than just to dump them back into the fund.
Back in the technology.
Okay. Into the general fund.
Well, the excess dollars, after the various technology components were addressed, with these E-rate monies.
Right.
There was then some excess dollars that ranged, like Ms. Henderson Baker said, from about $50,000 to $100,000+. So the question is, given that the board's already approved the Tier 1 and Tier 2 operations and has outstanding the network center that the board needs to address, doesn't want to address necessarily, but needs to address, we still have some excess monies. Right now, that money would just go back to the general fund.
Right, okay.
That's not totally accurate, because we got an outstanding request for a bid, and we don't know where that bid will fall with the existing funds that we're leaving. But
Right.
it was no case, was it, to exceed the
Right.
total
Right.
amount.
Right.
So in essence, now, we have no extra until we get the final bid in for the new equipment room.
My
And I
que-
guess to kind of,
My question was really not about extra, it may have sounded that way. My question was, were there any other proposed ideas about how to use those dollars?
Minus what you saw on yesterday, I did not see any other options
Okay.
coming from Dr. Shannon.
Okay,
I talked to Dr. Carpenter and asked him if he wanted to put some options in there. We
Okay.
talked about it, and at that time, he hadn't really formulated a plan for any money, because he didn't know what money would be available.
okay,
So, I mean, the money, you already have allocated approximately $550,000 from the vote you took yesterday.
right.
And so that would leave $630,000 approximately left over.
Okay,
make sure I'm clear, I think I understand what Mr. Meadows is speaking of. Once the E-rate monies came in, were there any other needs other than technology that these funds could have been used?
Yes.
That's my,
okay, that's what I'm not hearing.
right.
No, I'm sure the system has many needs. I'm not gonna say the needs I presented were the only needs for the system. I was presenting technology needs.
Okay,
Okay.
And I'm sure Dr. Carpenter can address other needs as well as Ms. Fury and Dr. Proctor. I'm sure they have needs that they would like to see addressed at some point. But I wasn't responsible for those needs. So I presented technology.
You made that clear.
Jill,
Based
just from-
on, I was gonna say the numbers, based on what we did yesterday with the first priority schools and the second priority schools, we would only have, with what we were presented, two options. Just going by what we were presented, which would be $50,751 going back into the fund balance, or $165,751 going back into the fund balance.
If you take option 3 or option 4,
2 or 4.
2 or 4.
still acknowledging what you said about the bid, yeah, okay. All right.
Not knowing, yeah, the exact price.
Gary, do you anticipate that that bid would come in more than the number we?
No, hopefully.
I don't either. I think we'll realize those monies, but that remains to be
I
seen.
anticipated actually being lower.
Me too. That's where I'm coming from.
The only thing that could be a
Let me ask you
question,
this, with this particular project, how much of that cost can be eliminated by us performing some of those tasks ourselves, as far as moving stuff, getting things set up, programmed?
I would have to go back and look at all the different components of it, and when I come back to the board with the engineering report for option 4, I will have a better idea of what we can do to reduce that amount, and then have more money available for other projects.
And so, along with what Mr. Johnson was saying, that's what we need, is more defined information, so that, because although we have this amount of money that's available, we don't want to spend all of it if not necessary. That's our point.
Absolutely.
Right.
But I need to really hear what the engineers say, and from that point, I can have a discussion with them and see what part of that we could do ourselves.
And I guess my other question is, are we allowing our engineers who develop our building, both here and at the academy, to have input, since they're familiar with everything.
The estimate that I gave you was based upon input from the engineers that is associated with the architectural firm that we use.
That we
So,
use.
yes. So we did have, the estimate that I provided did have input from those engineers. But in order to get an unbiased opinion from someone who didn't know anything about it, that's the reason I brought that other engineering firm in and developed the alternative options.
Okay.
Is that clear, Mr. Turner?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much involvement that they actually had in determining if some of these recommendations could be minimized as far as cost, because they know a different way of doing it because they built the buildings. That was my only concern.
The only option that the architect and the engineers that they deal with had was on option number 4. The engineering consultant that I asked to come in and do an assessment developed options 1, 2, and 3. From coming, looking at everything, taking measurements, drawings, etc. They spent an hour just looking at the blueprints of this building to see what would fit. And then they did a tour of the building, took measurements, etc. And not just physical measurements, but measures of the electrical system to see what kind of loads the emergency generator could handle.
Now, I want to be clear in relationship to this question, Mr. Turner. This item related to the Network Operations Center was taken out of the operations department and shifted to the technology department as a technology issue. It was never my understanding that the board viewed it as a construction or facilities issue. I made the original argument that it was a facilities issue, thus our people should have been looking at it. But somewhere along the line, the decision was made that this was a technology issue, thus we had nothing to do with it from Cunningham, Forehand, Matthews, and Moore. The figure that Dr. Shattuck is referring to of the 590, that was something that he'd gotten a while back from them. But this independent firm, I had no idea they were doing the work. I just want to be clear on that.
That was what I referenced to, the fact that the technology portion of it, as far as the computers, your cooling systems, what have you, yes, that's technology. But as far as maintenance, the air conditioning unit, where they should be,
It seems like a combined.
that should fall under maintenance because they know our buildings. That was my only.
Absolutely. The board asked me to develop options, and in my process of trying to develop some options, I ran into some obstacles. And eventually, it was recommended that I contact an engineering firm to do some analysis, and they recommended, in a particular engineering firm, I was pushing the deadline because I said I was going to present it at the October meeting, and so I contacted them, and they came in and did the analysis. This is just a preliminary, this is an analysis, that's all it is. It's not bid specifications, it's not final prices, because all of it would have to be bid out. But it is an analysis of what they determined was the needs and how it could be solved.
Okay.
But the engineer yesterday who did the presentation, he did say that he got another engineer involved who was a Havoc.
From his firm.
From his firm.
From his firm,
But it was
though.
not ours.
Yeah, it wasn't ours.
The
Exactly, that's my
engineer
point.
who spoke yesterday was an electrical engineer,
Right.
and he was the lead on this analysis. The other engineer, his colleague that he brought in, was a mechanical engineer, and he looked at the air conditioning system. So together, they developed this analysis and the first 3 options.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the operations report, I'll just bring attention to a couple of items. Number one, if you look at our SPLOS collections under business and finance, the school system's August SPLOS 3 distribution is $910,438, and that's a decrease of $249.33 from the July collection, but it is the second month in a row that collections have topped $900,000. That's a good thing. Total SPLOS 3 received for the first 20 months is approximately $16,848,568, and that's averaging $842,428 per month. In comparison with SPLOS 2, just to give you a point of reference, that's about $12,000 higher than what we were receiving during SPLOS 2 per month. If you look under maintenance and operations, the maintenance department has implemented a program called Utility Direct, And that's allowing us to track the monthly usage of utilities in our buildings and that cost. And we're looking at making some slight temperature adjustments as we go into the winter season, which could affect a savings in that area. Capital projects, I won't repeat the information there related to the work being done at the Career Academy, but I did send to the Board of Education a couple documents. Number one, a written email, and number two, a document that showed the steps we're taking to expedite that project and stay as close as possible to the schedule. And I did provide those dates requested to the BOE. In item 2, you'll see that all site work has been completed at the new Newton High School site. And that project has officially been turned over to the general contractors, McKnight Construction Company. Finally, if you look at transportation, the average cost of diesel fuel purchased during September was $3.08 per gallon, and fuel was last purchased in August for a cost of $3.16. So just like you're experiencing at the pumps personally, that cost is going down a little bit. In nutrition, you'll look at our Meal Pay Plus revenues for September. That was $146,456.90, and this is $30,540.42 of an increase above the same period in 2010. September 2011 revenues increased by 26%, so that program continues to be worth every dime that we've spent on it. Any other questions related to our operations report?
When do the fleet cards that we approved go into operation?
We began with some implementation this month.
Okay.
And we've got people on the ground working with some drivers. We're doing an analysis. It's not been rolled out wholesale to every driver, but we're looking at those drivers that spend the most time and miles getting back to the bus garage for refueling. Kind of starting with that group and then extending it to more drivers as we work our way through the school year. Any other questions? Mr. Chairman, this concludes the operations report.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. Item B, curricular. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. Ms. Fury?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. Just a quick synopsis of the curriculum and instruction and technology report. Looking at item number 2 under research-based instructional strategies and building background knowledge. On September 13th, at our regularly scheduled meeting for our teacher leaders, they did an excellent presentation on wide reading and sustained silent reading. The resource that they developed at that time is used in our schools, and school administrators use their resources to provide professional learning on site. Technology integration number 2. Scott Thomas and Craig Den attended an Apple training session that covers, or Apple workshop that covers security issues with Apple products. The training will be helpful in the technology department's effort to support the Newton College and Career Academies in their addition of all the Apple products. Items number 4 through 8 on the support activities address all of the different sorts of testing that goes on during the month of September, beginning with the Georgia Alternative Assessment or alternate assessment and the graduation test, the writing test for our juniors that is required. If you'll notice the artwork in the building, you'll see that it's from Flint Hill Elementary School and Newton High School students on the second floor of this building. Items number 13 and 14 on your screen should be in a different color. If you click on them, you'll be able to access the attachments. And item A is a calendar of all the Title I parental involvement activities, and they show to you how each of the schools are engaging our parents and addressing the needs of parents at those schools. The attachment B is a flyer through Title I that provides free resources and parent websites that parents can use to help to support their child's learning. And the flyer will be sent home, or has probably already been sent home, for all Title I students, and it's sent in both English and in Spanish. The career, item number 17, the Career and Technical and Agricultural Education Department was very successful in receiving grants to assist in purchasing equipment for the Newton College and Career Academy. The grants total $1,345,000. The grant funded through the Georgia Department of Education is to be utilized in purchasing major equipment to be used in the various programs at NCCA. When we met yesterday, Mr. Woodard was present, and then he had to go back to the school. So I've asked that he come talk to you at this time just about an update for anything that you need to know as we stand with the College and Career Academy. And after he's finished, I will come back up and introduce the
ombudsman folks and our school level administrators and their team to address the graduation coaches.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fury. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Sorry I didn't get all the questions yesterday before I had to run back and be principal for a little while. But I did want to bring you a quick update on the Career Academy. We're operational. Logistics, all the logistic issues that sort of cropped up at the beginning have been worked out well. I really appreciate Dr. Carpenter and her staff down at Alcovy and accommodating us. I think it's been a very smooth transition, and we made all that happen before she came back to work. But the Career Academy has actual enrollment this year of 248 students. It was down a little bit than what we had anticipated early on. Some of the students that had signed up for the Career Academy did not show back up to the Newton County school system, and we had reserved spots for them, and then with the scheduling issues at the beginning of the year, we weren't able to schedule more students in. So we're down a little bit, but we're offering segments in healthcare science, engineering, manufacturing, culinary arts, agriculture, computer repair, marketing, accounting, construction, broadcast video, Latin, AP Stats, and Spanish. Our projected enrollment for next year is 550 students, and as you reviewed the budget yesterday, that would include an additional 6 positions as far as teachers for next year, and then with the new programs that will open up the following year with the projected enrollment of 700, that would be an additional 6 positions that we would need to add. That is in addition to the positions that we would pull from the base schools as some of those programs like graphic arts and construction would transition over to the Career Academy. As Ms. Fury said, we did receive grants from the State Department of Education to assist with the equipment purchases, and this is for large equipment. We can't use it for furniture or small supplies, so within the budget there's some additional funds there to help with the little things that we'll have to do in addition to the large equipment. But that grant totaled $1,345,000. I was anticipating that we would, since we're starting up part of the programs this year and part next year, that we would have to wait and get some of the grants next year. However, they went ahead and forward funded us all the grants for this year. I'll just spend part of the programs we have open now, I'll spend prior to December, and the programs we'll add next year, I'll spend in May and June to finish that grant out. That's pretty much the summary that I have. If you have any additional questions, I've been meeting with the architects and the contractors. I know that's a tight time frame. It was a tight time frame from the get-go. Last January, I think, sort of set us back a little bit in the weather that we had, but I'm confident, and met with the architect again today. Ray Moore came out and met with me and sort of went over the actual rooms that we have to have finished, in addition to the life and safety issues and the hallways. And he's confident still that we'll be able to open the Career Academy come January 4th. Have any questions?
Yes, I have 2, if you don't mind. Is that too many?
If you break them down for me.
Okay.
One at a time.
Okay. Have you finished selecting the teachers that's going to be transferred to the new building?
We know which positions we'll need to transfer.
Teachers?
Well, if there's a teacher in that position, then they'll have to be transferred as well. But we'll use the district policy on making transfers as relates to hiring the teachers.
We have identified them.
We have identified them.
The teachers that's going to be transferred.
We have identified the positions. If there's a teacher in a position that has tenure according to the district policy, that person would come over.
Okay. Transportation. Have we got all the ducks in order as to how we're going to transfer and handle the transportation of the students to and from the schools and schedules?
The transportation is working currently. The only difference we'll have second semester is that the students will be transported from Alcovy to the Career Academy versus being transported from Newton to Alcovy.
East side transportation?
East side transportation is working great. Mr. Jeff Tur and his team has been great in making that happen. The Newton, we've had a few issues in the students getting back on time, but they've been able to catch the bus. It's just been a real rush when they get back.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I want to ask you, Mr. Woodard, has 2 parts. Has the 7-period day presented a challenge in terms of career pathway, credit accumulation, you know, going down the road? And if so, is there a way to look at some type of modification or hybrid, or have you thought about that in the future in terms of them completing their pathways and credentials?
I think when you know, number one, in relation to any elective, when it comes from 8 down to 7, it poses some issues. And I don't think that's specific to the Career Academy. I think we'll see some of those lower enrollments in the career tech classes, as well as some of the other electives at the base school. As far as a solution, I think, you know, I would like to think that related to career tech at the Career Academy, the lab situations, the 51 minutes really makes a tight squeeze if you're doing a culinary lab. And if we could, once we get to the Career Academy, within the Career Academy, create some type of modified schedule. I haven't really peeled into that yet. I've been really focused on the logistics of opening the school and getting everything set.
Are there sites
But
that
I would welcome some of that conversation.
Are there sites that are doing it across the state that, you know, you could look at?
You know, I've had several people call me since we've implemented the 7-period day to ask how we were making it happen, and we're making it happen. I know that Rockdale is concerned. They're currently on a 4x4
Modified.
AB block, and they're concerned that, you know, how it will affect their numbers if they move to a 6 or 7-period day.
Can I try 2 more?
Come on, Mr. Johnson.
The greenhouse issues between the Career Academy and Newton High. Have we decided how that's going to be handled and where it's going to be?
You know, currently, within the current school year, the course we're teaching related to floral design really doesn't require any greenhouse. It's more of the cooler that is within the building itself. For next year, you know, I think we're going to have to, you know, have a shared environment, as we are now with Alcovy with several of their labs. When Newton High opens up, there's a new greenhouse to be opened there, and then the Career Academy will utilize the greenhouses at Newton.
You left out the livestock. What do we do with those portion of it?
Dr. Matthews has directed me to come up with a plan to have a animal science facility, to bring to him and the board a proposal for an animal science facility at each one of the schools, and to try to duplicate something that we, you know, could utilize in our animal science program for each of the base schools.
And I would add that would certainly be just a proposal.
That's correct.
In very tight economic times. But nonetheless, some of you have asked about that. So I'm asking James to explore it so you at least know whatever your ultimate decision is.
That's correct. And I've asked my ag teachers to explore some sites where they have those facilities and to bring me a recommendation back.
Thank you, sir.
James, when you look at projected enrollment from 248 to 550, you said an increase in teachers, then to 700 for fiscal 14. Is that an additional 6 teachers?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we'll also be going from currently a 1.5 teaching position from DeKalb, from Georgia Piedmont Technical College, to 4 positions next year and 5 for the 2013-14 school year. And at the same time, I hope that we'll be adding some dual enrollment from Georgia Perimeter College, as you and I have discussed several times. We're very excited about getting this building open. I've got a $1 bet that it's going to open on time.
Are you feeling warm?
Did you bet with Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Johnson's feeling warm.
Can I ask you a question? Will you
Yes,
take me
sir.
on that bet?
I will honor that bid. I'll honor that.
I'll give you $1.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
Are there any other questions about the curriculum instruction and technology report?
I have one
Sure.
question. Is item number 2 under support activities?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me know when you're there.
I'm here.
Okay. The after-school program, the System of Care grant, It says that the kids are provided bus transportation to the program. Who's paying for the bus transportation?
I believe it's an in-kind fund that we are contributing to the System of Care grant.
Okay,
So we are.
okay. And this now, so this doesn't interfere with any other like transportation issues or, no, for funding? And this is, the buses are always traveling over there? Is it like an every hour or is it a set time? It says between 11 and 3.
It's a set time. They go
So it's like
between-
once?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions about the report? Okay, at this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. John Waka, the Assistant Vice President for Center Operations, Ms. Adrienne Rodriguez, the Operations Manager for North Georgia, and Sue Fila, the Vice President of Operations for the Ombudsman Program, so that they can give us an update on our site location.
And Sam, I do see Phyllis Lucia in the audience as well.
She told me not to introduce her.
Okay, all right.
So don't worry about me. She's just here to support.
All right. You guys. We also have two very important people with us tonight. These are our center directors for the Covington West Center, Ms. Nicole Cantor, and the East Side, Ms. Amy Long.
Well, good evening. Dr. Matthews, Chairman Turner, and board members, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight and give you an update on where we are, what we've been doing, and our suggestion of where our best possibility is to go next. Some current comparative figures. The sharp figures are from last year, and that's a year total. Current enrollment at Ombudsman is 158. Our current attendance is 86%. Discipline incidents is, I think, a nice contrast and sharply down from last year. And these would be incidents where we have to have a parent come in and we have a formal conversation with the parent and the student about behavior issues. To date, we had 6 behavior drops. And up from last year, we do have 48% IEP student population, which is, it's not uncommon. We've seen it at other centers before, but I thought we would bring that out just to give you a picture of the challenges that we have with our population of students. Currently, we're at the Sharp location, and we have 2 separate sites within the Sharp location, so the students are separated. We have continued and continuously searched for 2 additional locations, appropriate locations for our ombudsman centers. And we will have a handout for you. We've got them, okay. You're quicker than I saw. We've looked at well over 50 locations, and many of those locations, either due to size or zoning or presence to alcohol sales or a gas station or other identified hazards were ruled out. We do have 1 new construction site that has been located. Kind of the summation of the timeline. We identified many of the locations that we looked at in early March. The west location, we did execute a lease in May and began construction in July. The east location, we decided the original location that we had mutually agreed upon was in, I believe, too busy of an area, so we relocated that. So we found a new location in June, and we began construction in July. The 1st of August, the district and we were notified by the Department of Education that due to proximity of a pizza restaurant and proximity to, I think it was a Kroger's, Publix, was too close, and the selling of alcohol was within a 200-yard distance required according to the regulations. And there's the timeline. So within 2 days, with the help of Newton County and our resources and assets to move the assets out of the centers into the Sharp location, we were able to begin classes on time. A lot of people worked very hard to make that work. August 8th, we began a new search for additional sites. And by September 15th, we had located the current location that we'll be talking about that had just become available. So in our first original site search through our realtor and through our center development support folks, that one wasn't even on the map at that point.
It was a new property.
It's a new developed property. It's just maybe 3 blocks away from the bus shop. Between, there's 2 schools there on Bypass Road. It's 10,000 square feet. Really, to operate each of these centers, we need 4,000 square feet. Within this building, we have the ability to operate 2 separate and distinct learning centers. In addition to that, adding another 2,000 square feet of space to provide an office, to provide a facility for students who need more one-on-one attention, wraparound services such as special ed support, speech, whatever, social workers, that we probably wouldn't have had in the 2 original sites. We would have had to share the meeting room. The benefits of this, it's new construction. We don't have to worry about asbestos. We don't have to worry about fire codes not being applicable anymore. It's centrally located. Transportation to one location will allow us to separate, say there's 4 students on the west side that got into some trouble and they can't go to the same center for whatever reason. It allows us the flexibility to place them in the same location, but 2 separate and distinct centers that are approximately 50 yards apart. And so that you don't have an east bus running west or a west bus running east. Those would have to be split up. There's less foot traffic, as with the east location, it was surrounded by businesses, and through your recommendation, and we firmly agreed that there was just too much going on around there and too much exposure, too many businesses. It was just too busy of an area. Just slightly up the hill, maybe 50 yards, there's a place where you can get your hair cut and an HVAC business, but that's it, really. It's a very isolated location. It would be very easy to control the kids' comings and goings. As I said, we went out and looked at the location. We would have 2 distinctive doors that are 50 yards apart with the office in the center. We can stagger session times so that as one session enters the east location, another session 15 minutes later or so would enter the west location. We do have other examples of doing this and this working quite well, and co-locating in the same building, but separated by a wall. You can't get from one center to the other except to walk outside. And that's a picture of the location, using the far entrance and the near entrance with 4,000 square feet on each left and right side there, and 2,000 square foot in the middle with an office and an additional room equipped with additional technology and computers and resources for students who may find times within our center a little too socially busy, or it gives us a next step to go and work with these students and give them that additional intensive one-on-one support. An additional option is to sign the lease at this bypass site and just open one 4,000 square foot center, and then continue to have one center at the Sharp Academy, and continue to look for an additional west site. I can tell you right now with our real estate searches, there's really nothing, absolutely nothing available that would meet the requirements of the Department of Education or zoning, or any of the standards that we'd have to meet to put students in there. And again, the bypass location just became available. The landlord is aggressively searching for tenants. He's willing to lease us the whole entire building, but he really wants an answer fairly soon. So if we wait much longer, we might be in a real difficult spot. Any questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Number one, the figures that you showed us with comparison with Sharp
Yes.
and the ombudsman, is that year-to-date figures?
That's year-to-date for ombudsman. That's of last Friday.
Okay, how about Sharp? Is
That was the entire year.
Okay, so what are year-to-date? In order for us to get a clear picture.
Sure.
We need
No, that's
year-to-date
not
from
comparative.
both.
I didn't know that.
And compare one with the year-to-date.
Basically, the ones for us ended at the first quarter.
But you understand my point?
Yes, I understand your point.
Because we're looking at a whole year for Sharp,
So it
but
would
only
be-
year-to-date for
Right.
ombudsman.
Which is 2.5 months for
Exactly.
ombudsman compared to a whole bunch of months for Sharp. So
Right.
that's an unfair comparison. So it's a slide that we really.
So
need.
my next question is that you mentioned that there was one location that had been identified and it was too busy.
Was that the 4,000 square foot one? Is that what you're talking about?
That was the one that we originally agreed upon, and then it was in the major shopping center in the middle of town there.
Oh, okay.
And Dr. Matthews came to us and said that the board had, and people in the administration had some concerns about the number of businesses open around there and how busy that location was.
Trying to get the buses in and out and that sort of thing. Remember?
Yeah.
Over
And it
by
would-
the
and then come to
ChickfilA.
find out, it would have been too close to Kroger, I guess.
Right, it would have been in essence.
So it would have been. rolled
We
back.
did talk about that. That was probably not a good idea. So what is the decision that we need to make? We promised on March 8th, when we voted to approve this, that we would do right by these students, and we haven't.
Right, we haven't.
And we need to fix this, and we need to do this, in a fair way. And we've been using a building that is phased out that we're not supposed to be using right for this purpose, at least based on our March 8th vote. And our, the obligation we have to the community and to parents and to these students. So, Mr. Chair, where do we go from here?
Well, there's another concern that I have as well, is the fact that when we voted, we thought we would be in full operation by that date. However, we've gone from the beginning of the school year up until now, and we're allowing a private entity to use a building which we have not required them to go by our standards in leasing school property. So I think that's an issue that we need to address as well, because this is a private entity that's using school facilities to make a profit. And I think we need to really look at that and work out something and get some final, figures that is owed to the system, because we're not in the business to allow private entities to use our property to make a
And I
profit.
completely agree. We are willing to go back and look at the original agreement and come to a conclusion that benefits or is fair to both sides.
And
You paid
next,
utilities, right? Y'all paid
We're
utilities.
paying the utilities.
Okay.
and I guess we need some guidelines as to some projected dates that this will be operative. And then I guess I have to come back before the board. I would prefer it come back before the board for discussion and before we approve it, if that's the pleasure of the board.
What is coming back for discussion again?
For them to
clarity?
come up with a plan
Figures?
now, beg pardon?
Figures or,
Figures and the location, the works on how everything is gonna work. Because when we first initially talked about it, we talked about having two separate locations. And so these are some concerns that I have, the fact that we have talked with the parents and this is what their understanding was when we initially, talked about going to the program.
And that was our focus at the start
Right.
too. And as legislation gets changed and those circumstances come up, I think, that's not something we intended either, because, we've got two
Right.
locations we're paying rent on right now, and we will the entire year. But That's in the past, and
Yeah.
Right.
You mean the original two, that the DOE would not?
we're still,
Okay, for some reason, I thought that you were able to get out of those.
no.
And I think that's a piece of this puzzle that we've had I don't remember the last presentation, and this is, I'm not pointing fingers, but we've had very little communication in terms of, I mean, I've visited over here a couple of times. One day, Mr. Turner and I went to visit. You know, and I believe that ombudsman can do the right thing. I've seen it in other counties when we went with, to see the sites with Phyllis. So I know that it can work well for our students. I know you ran into a bump with the DOE, and I don't think that we blame you for that, but it is time to get this right.
I don't think we can wait a whole lot longer.
Yeah,
We owe
because
it
we're
to
at the end of the
students.
first grading period now.
And that's kind of why we're here, just laying it out, saying, here's where we've been. We've looked at over 50 locations. Right now, there's nothing available that will match. Maybe next year if the legislation changes, and we're working on that. Well, the hazards were described differently last year. This is something new. You know, you had to locate our facilities away from an inherent hazard to children. Well, a tattoo shop, place that sold guns, of course we knew that, or gas stations. But, you know, we have a chance right now to do two distinct locations. It's not exactly, I think, what we envisioned either. But it's workable, and we've done it in other places before.
Well, Mr. Chair, I've got a question. And this, our staff may be able to answer it better, but do we have parents complaining about the fact that they're at Sharp, the facility, or do we have parents complaining that they're having to travel to one central location? Do you think that would be a hindrance?
Not that I'm aware of, okay? No, I'm not aware. I haven't had any parent complaints regarding.
Because I guess that's where I think we're at that point now. You're looking for our approval of whether or not, do we want to have two separate locations, or do we just want to would we be willing to go forth with one location?
It sounds like with the percentage of special education students, which is up 8% from what you said, is that higher than what you deal with typically across the country?
Typically, yes.
So would it possibly be, if it were a centralized location, and you talked about having, supplemental staff, it might be that works even
It may be a
better.
benefit
It might
to have
streamline
this.
services for that, because you've got half of those students have IEPs.
It would make it substantially easier for the caseworker and for people that needed to meet with ombudsman folks. Plus, it would give them a private, secure facility, because you wouldn't be able to get from one center into that. You know, there would be 3 separate compartments within that building.
I mean, I'll be honest, just looking at the presentation tonight, it sounds like a good idea to move forward with one location. I do agree with you. I think we do have to look at the rental fee maybe, or maybe renegotiating that contract or something, but I think it may be a go.
Right, and I think we're well prepared to work with the district and the board on the cost for the use of the Sharp building. Obviously, it's not something we expected to need to be doing at this point, but we do also understand that you weren't expecting to use that building either. And we are more than happy to discuss that with you and come up with a solution that will be agreeable to everyone. I think one of the other big pieces to know, and you'll see it on the list, is specifically, you may, be looking in the area and see vacant spaces. The other big situation that we ran into was a lot of those vacant spaces are owned by the bank. And for us, as a company, we lease locations to serve our students, but we do not purchase the buildings. And when those locations are owned by the bank now, the only thing that they want to do with them is sell them. They're not interested in leasing them to us. So that is also something that we ran into. And on a couple of the other locations, there was actually one of the anchor tenants had a option to agree to an education use within that plaza, and they chose not to agree to that education use. So those are some of the other obstacles that we've run into. I have personally worked with a number of our centers in the organization that are multiple locations within the same building, whether they're right next to each other or a couple of doors apart. And we have been very successful in those types of locations. Particularly too when you are looking at wraparound services, the district employees needing to come to the center to work with particular students, provide services, it does help for them to be able to come to one central location. If IEP meetings need to happen, parent meetings, it will allow for those things. And we are very happy to provide separate space to accommodate those services for the students at the location.
I have a couple of questions. When, all of us are having discussion or dialogue about figures, what kind of timeline are we talking about for figures? Like renegotiating or talking about figures for the use of SHARP?
I think that's something we can be prepared right away to speak about. That's one of the reasons that I'm here.
Okay, so
could we come up with something and have it presented to us at our next board meeting on the 25th?
I need to be able to vote on it.
Not a problem.
I believe we could do that. In fact, I would suggest, in keeping with our practice, that you meet with our Deputy Superintendent for Operations. He will include me in on that, and we'll get this ball rolling.
Absolutely.
And then I have another question, and I don't know if maybe Dennis or is Mr. Barr here? One of you guys may want to answer this question for me, versus then having a centralized site that may change the transportation cost slightly. Will it? Because the initial agreement was west and east, and I know with the tier system we separated some of the buses where they wouldn't be going so far out. So having a centralized site, that's going to change those costs.
Any change, Ms. Anderson Baker, we've talked about this preliminarily, would be slight because we have drivers right now that are currently totally dedicated to the ombudsman program. One driver that's east, one driver that's west. So still with the new location on one site, it still would only require the 2 drivers. So we should be in pretty good shape there.
Okay.
Well, if we can get Mr. Turner's concern about dollars for this building, exclusive of utilities, because you paid that.
Yes.
And if we can handle or agree to, I think what Mrs. Coggin mentioned with the central site, which I don't find proper. I just want to see something working like I saw in Douglas County, because I was impressed with those 3 sites. I talked with every student in those sites, all different levels. Some were there by order, some were there voluntarily. And I think it can work well, and I support it, and I'll do everything I can to be helpful, but we need to move on it.
Right. And our concern and the reason we wanted to be here tonight was we do need to move forward quickly. Our biggest concern is we have a lease for half of that space right now. Because we needed to move forward knowing that you did want 2 locations.
Oh, I see.
We didn't, we have not agreed with the landlord
For the
yet
whole space.
For the entire 10,000 square feet. We have agreed with them on 4,000 square feet. And our timeline here is pretty short. What he's telling us is he has other interested tenants and needs an answer from us fairly quickly to
Are you in town tomorrow morning?
I can be.
Dr. Carpenter, are you available tomorrow morning? We can meet with Ombudsman. I'll clear my schedule. I think it's that important.
I would be happy to get that started tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning?
We got some meetings set up with the architect and a local entity here tomorrow morning.
What time would you be available then in the morning?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock tomorrow morning?
Perfect.
8 until 10.
8 to 10. I think we probably could hammer something out. See you tomorrow morning in my office at 8.
Great.
You feel like you got in trouble, don't you? Superintendent's office.
I have another question. Were there any other counties in the state of Georgia that you guys were opening up sites in this year?
Yes, Greene County.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Did you not experience these problems in Greene County?
Did you chose one and DOE said alcohol was too, is that what they did?
We have had the same issue and have had to find a new location there. Fortunately, we did not build out the location in Greene County. They had signed their contract with us a lot later than you had, and we already knew we were looking at a delayed start with them, and they were providing a district space for that delay, but we've had the same issues there and the same difficulty with the space.
Is this a new state regulation that you're having to deal with?
It is not a new, it is a different interpretation.
Of the same language. So prior to this year, given the language, the interpretation has allowed ombudsman close to a Kmart or to a pizza place or to a Walmart.
Absolutely.
But now the current interpretation is that you can't move to such a site. Next.
Correct.
So are the current locations, because the ones I went in were
Yeah.
I mean, if I wanted to go buy alcohol, I could. And so could the kids. But are those grandfathered in?
Yes.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well,
That's a BOE.
those locations were all approved. I think the interesting part and the part that we really struggled with is we put our locations in places where it provides opportunities for students to get work.
Right.
Opportunities. Any of the locations that they have had an issue with are locations that anyone can walk into at any age. We're talking about a family pizza restaurant
Right.
that happens to serve beer. We're talking about a grocery store that any student can go into at any age.
Our kids could end their school
Kids-
day and go to work in any
Right.
of these establishments.
Absolutely. And, when we did talk to the DOE about, even putting modifications on it, which included having to get parental permission to work in those facilities, to do any of those kind of things, they were not open to that discussion. But, it has been something we have always looked for, because we always want to give the students opportunities to be active, participants in the community. And unfortunately, this new interpretation has put a lot of restrictions and limitations on the work opportunities that we can provide for
Well,
students.
now you're across the country, so is this state specific?
Yes.
Because Phyllis, am I not correct that some of those high school kids did work in that shopping center where we were? I thought so, didn't
Absolutely.
they?
And I was gonna say, that was a selling point that you guys use. So what happens now, because the selling point at that Douglasville facility that we went to beside the Kroger, the director at the time we came in was like, well, this student's gonna go to work down here at the
Right.
record store and stuff. So what's gonna happen now within our county?
We will continue to provide students opportunities for work-related
Just makes it a little
studies.
more difficult.
It just makes it a little bit more difficult because the students then have to find transportation to get to those work opportunities.
By the way, is this issue of close proximity to an establishment like Walmart or a pizza place that might sell alcohol, is that issue dead with you, or are you continuing to pursue it with the State Department officials?
We are still continuing to pursue
Because
it.
I just think, I don't
As
mind
an
saying that,
organization.
I think it's a ludicrous interpretation.
We are
You lost money
util-
based on their
Yes.
interpretation.
But we are utilizing our government relations resources to pursue this with the state.
Maybe that's what we
I mean, at this point, for Newton County, we need to move forward and we need to get other locations. And we are not going to delay anything here with our site, but we will continue to pursue that because we feel that it's an unfair interpretation of that. These are businesses that serve the community and that anyone can work in them, anyone can
Intern.
anyone can
all kind of things.
enter those businesses
Right.
for, any type of reason, and we feel that it really restricts opportunities for our students, and so we will continue to pursue it regardless of the outcome here.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? No. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay, so we are on to our next presentation tonight, and our presentation about graduation coaches and their roles and responsibilities. I would like to introduce everybody. I'm not sure that everyone on the board knows all of our folks from our high schools who are here. So I'm just going to ask you to stand when I call your names. As we worked on this presentation as a team, the presentation will be led by Dr. LaQuanda Carpenter and Mr. Jeff Chur, but all of us played a role in pulling it together, starting with Ms. Gregory's framework, and we built out from there. So I'd like to start with Alcovey High School. We've got Dr. LaQuanda Carpenter, our principal. We've got Mr. Melvin Parker, our graduation coach, and Mr. Richard Howard, our assistant principal for instruction, as our Alcovey representation. We have our Eastside team, Mr. Dennis Roddenberry, our graduation coach, Miss Elizabeth Gregory, and Mr. Jeff Chur, our assistant principal for instruction. And finally, we have our Newton High School team. We've got Dr. Craig Lockhart, our principal, our graduation coach, Miss Kate Etheridge, and Miss Debbie Stevens, our assistant principal for instruction. And the team that you see before you today is mostly responsible for pulling together the instructional focus program as an outpouring of our 7-period day. And we've had some challenges as we've gotten started, but they've done a very good job. And tonight you'll see some of the things that they work on as graduation coaches with support from their administrative team.